As the title says from the video, I am now in Washington, D.C. And that is one thing about YouTube that I don't like, is that I can never surprise you. But anyway, I'm excited to kind of show you all of the sights here. Is our 16th president, Mr. Abraham Lincoln. And it's just really cool to see some of these memorials, because they're just so much bigger in person than you think they are. I know that there was some kind of trivia about his left hand being closed and this one being opened. I don't remember what that is now, but it is just really interesting to see the man who ended our slavery and gave our American states a unification that we hadn't had before. As you can tell, I'm standing in front of the Washington Memorial, and while it's kind of hard to show all of it here because it's so tall, they said that when this was completed in 1884, this was the tallest building in the world. And it's kind of been cool to see a little bit of colonial Williamsburg before this trip, and I'll be seeing Mount Vernon a little bit later, and then to see this Washington Memorial, all signs of what a great leader our first leader was, George Washington. This is really cool to see the Martin Luther King Jr. memorial that's here. I've been to Washington D.C. once before, and I didn't get to see this, but just to see kind of the size of him, and now that I know a lot more about him, it's just really cool to see. This is the very spot where Martin Luther King gave his speech, the very famous I Have a Dream speech. And you can just imagine this whole area being filled with thousands of people all cheering for you. And what an amazing feeling that must have been to see all of that. Behind me here is Franklin D. Roosevelt, or FDR. And you may not know who he is, maybe you've heard of his name, but he is actually one of my personal heroes. He's the only one of our presidents that was elected to 4 different terms, and he helped us during the Great Depression and World War II. He created a lot of the interstate systems and programs that we have today that helped Americans a lot, and he is just highly respected. One little tidbit a lot of people don't know is that he was actually attacked by polio when he was in his 20s, so even before he became president. And so most of his term, he was either seen seated or he had his son help him, and he actually wore very tight braces on his legs that were very painful. But he wanted to show that he was a strong individual regardless of his own personal pain, to present that strong face to all Americans. This statue here behind me is really interesting because FDR was known for what was called fireside chats, where he would sit and talk to people through radios, and people really felt that they could connect with him like he was there in their living room with him. And no other president up to that time had been so personable and so reachable. But this was when radios were starting to become popular in almost everyone's home, and it was the way that they could stay the most connected to what was going on in the world through these fireside chats. Something I wanted to show was the Pentagon, and obviously right now it is not open to the public, but you can still kind of drive around and get pretty close to the area. And my cousin actually lives nearby and works in the Pentagon, and so they allowed me to come up to their apartment and look at this. So I wanted to kind of show you the view of the Pentagon behind me here. See if I can get this. So it is that building that is right there. And this is just a really cool view that I have of the Pentagon. So I feel a bit spoiled that I have family here in the area that I could have this view to show you. This is a really cute little part of Georgetown that not even some of the locals know about. This is on the canal right here, which is cute in and of itself. This is on Loch 4, and if you find Loch 4, then you'll find this area. But it just has a feel like you're actually in Amsterdam with the canal and this cute little path that's behind me here and all of these cute little buildings. So if you get a chance to check it out, this is really adorable. The school that's behind me here is called Georgetown University, and it is just so beautiful. It's actually the oldest Catholic institution for higher education here in the US. And if you're down by the canal, come on up to the upper part of Georgetown and you can see this beautiful campus. There's a lot of buildings kind of around the area, but this is kind of the main campus area here to see this really stunning building right here. This place behind me is called the Berliner, and it's a really pretty building. It's not open right now. I might have to come back this afternoon just to try their food, which is all German cuisine and beers. But the funny thing about it is this is a speech from JFK in which he said, "Ich bin ein Berliner." And that was during the Cold War. He was trying to say that he stood with Berlin citizens by saying, "I am one of you." What's really funny, and that he didn't know at the time, is that ein Berliner is a jelly donut. So basically he said to the German people, "I am a jelly donut." And later he found out about it, was good-natured and everything. But this is just really cute that they decided to put that, of all things, on the Berliner restaurant. While I haven't seen this movie, if you have seen the 1973 movie called The Exorcist, you might recognize these steep stairs behind me. I guess some pivotal moment happened here, someone was thrown down them or something. But anyway, they're now nicknamed the Exorcist stairs. At the top, on the left side, is, I guess, Reagan's home. She was the 12-year-old girl, I guess. And you can actually still see that from the outside. So if you are curious to have a little walk down memory lane of a movie, this is the place to do it in Georgetown. This church that you see behind me here is actually the National Cathedral here in Washington, D.C. And as you can see, it is really, really tall. And I could actually see it when I was over at my cousin's near the Pentagon. From far away, you can still see it. It's just a really big building. This was built in 1907 when Teddy Roosevelt was president and wasn't completed for 83 years when George Bush Sr. was president. It is styled as the Neo-Gothic style and was modeled after the Gothic style in England in the late 14th century. It is just really a beautiful building here. I'm in the Mount Vernon garden right now waiting for my tour, and some of these trees are just absolutely huge. And there's one that is from 1785 and it is just massive. I've asked around and nobody actually knows the height of it, but they're really beautiful and it's nice and kind of shaded here, so it's pretty to walk around if you get here before your tour. I just finished the mansion tour that's behind me here, and I just wanted to kind of tell you a little bit about it. I wasn't able to get any videos, but I'll at least be able to show you some of the pictures. One of the interesting things that they told us beforehand was that next to the big stairwell, which I apologize I didn't get a picture of, is a very famous key. When the French stormed the Bastille prison in Paris in 1789, which started the French Revolution, the key to the Bastille was sent here to George Washington, as Lafayette considered him the father of all freedom, and it has remained there ever since. So that was really cool to see, and just the connection between France and the US. Now, looking from the view that people have from here, let me go ahead and show this to you. It is just very, very peaceful and quiet. And with this view, you can see why George Washington remained here and did a lot of business and stuff here. It's just really stunning. So if you get a chance to come down here and see both the gardens and the house, I definitely recommend it. So as you can see behind me here, it is a very iconic White House. And no trip to Washington, D.C. is complete without seeing this. The last time I came, though, they allowed us to go to this gated area, and now it's down here. Unfortunately, I can't get any closer, but you can't have a video without having the White House in it. While our nation is not that old compared to many other countries, it is still really interesting walking around DC and just seeing all the history that is here, especially relating to the foundation of our country, its leaders, and so many other things that take place in our country. The building you see behind me is the Museum of the Bible. And regardless if you're a religious person or not, this is actually a really fascinating place to see. Not only do they talk about just kind of the history of the Bible, but they also bring in different languages, how it was used, Hebrew and then Latin, how it's translated into German. It talks about geography of it. And so you can really even just get a historical or a geography lesson just by being here and exploring this. One of the really cool things for only $5 extra is to do Revelations of Washington. And basically it's kind of a ride that you stand and then it takes you through the city and shows you different biblical passages that they have around Washington, D.C. here, and buildings, statues, and monuments. One thing, if you do have problems with motion sickness, do not do this, but otherwise it is really great and a really fun way to see both Washington and the biblical connection that they have with each other. It's crazy how many museums they have here in DC. The only other place I've been to that has that many is in Berlin, where they just have museum after museum. But here in DC, regardless of what you enjoy, they have something for everyone. They have the typical art museums that's scattered all over the city. Smithsonian actually has a collection of different ones that are very specific: natural history, African American Civil War history, and things like that. In addition to those, there was the Museum of the Bible that I went to. There is Native American history. There's the Holocaust Museum, and there's one that's actually really cool. That is the International Spy Museum. So if you enjoy spies, that one's a really good one. But this is a wonderful place just to kind of explore and really get in some different culture than you might be exposed to somewhere else. I think I've shown you all that I can possibly show you on this trip, or at least I gave you a really good overview of what all is here. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next video.